Okay, I'm going to finish with a piece called Abiza Cop in parentheses. Abiza Cop was a pamphleteer during the English Revolution who, just after the execution of Charles I, published a pamphlet in 2 parts called A Fiery Flying Roll. And for publishing it, he was put in prison for 3 years, and it eventually crumbled, forced him to recant. The problem with Copp's pamphlet was Cromwell and his form of New Labour, as it were, had they managed to cope with the whole notion of economic levelling, of social levelling within a certain class. But what Copp and other people who are loosely called ranters wanted was a kind of metaphysical levelling, and they're making a claim to the whole notion that they were as much in possession of language as anybody else. And this was incredibly dangerous to Cromwell, and continued to be dangerous in England for a long time. And of course it shows why there was this resistance to the translation of the Bible. I mean, we're talking about 40, 50 years after the publication of the King James Version, and already people like Copp could write like the prophet Ezekiel, which was pretty dangerous in England, or anywhere. I've been interested in this pamphlet for a long time, but I was reading it recently, or when I wrote this, 3 years ago at least. And I got interested in the fact that Copp uses so many parentheses. There are probably more parentheses per page of Copp's pamphlet than any other text I've ever looked at. And I started wondering why this is. When I started noticing to start with, it was almost as if there were 2 different texts on the page. There was one which wasn't in parentheses and the one which was in parentheses. And I started reading just the parentheses to say what this is and see what this actually said. And then I thought, well, what Copp's actually doing here is he's giving an image of his own sense of where he is writing within society, that he is automatically within a parenthesis from the point of view of radical dissent. And that, in fact, this is, well, what he's saying is, I will be put in parenthesis, so I'll put my text in parenthesis, and indeed all radical dissent is still put in a similar parenthesis. So I decided to extract Copp's parentheses and make a text which only consists of them. So you have to understand when I'm reading this that every line is in itself a parenthesis, because I can't actually express that with my voice, except for the last few lines, which are a kind of life of Copp, where I use some of his text outside the parenthesis. To all the inhabitants of the earth, persons and things, in this day, in me, the internal, invisible almightiness hath lain, as it were, with a loud voice, my dear ones, the body or outward form being awake all this while, to my apprehension, as it were, for the space of half an hour, I inwardly first, being filled with exceeding amazement, and take what you can of it in these expressions, though the matter is beyond expression, for a season, in the night, as yet, in thee, things of this life, in part, with a vengeance, in pleading against the letter and history, and for the spirit and mystery, and with a witness some of you shall find it to be, though I say reconciled to both as to all things else as they are esteemed in this my day, yea, even at the doors, without you, once more for your own sakes I say, I speak comparatively, now, without contradiction, holily, mostly, of late at least, who are accounted the offscouring of all things, now in man, in any form of man or woman, whoever thou art, in the form of men, in the name of eternal God, I say, through and through, in the basest manner, for aught you know, so called, as your late great London feast, for I know what, in the least degree, that huge heap of ashes, i.e., this shall be done inwardly and outwardly, and shall be fulfilled both in the history and mystery, now in me, among other strange exploits upon the face of the earth, among many other strange and great exploits, so called, all this while, also among you, in you, for a season, O mother of witchcrafts, who dwellest in gathered churches, now, most miraculously, even base things by way of preface, just now, thievish and hoggishly as I live in this great notable and terrible day of the Lord, in a way that I will not acquaint thee with, insolently and proudly in way of disdain, trulier than they are aware of, though exceeding wise, once more in part, in me, my corpse I mean, in me, being advised by my demi-lance, Sapphira like, I say, though strange for the present, right well, I say, indeed, in this form, a little, only nowadays, whom it hitteth, behold, I show you a mystery and put forth a riddle to you, only as I have accounted it in the time of my fleshly holiness, as I then accounted them, I say, as upon the wings of the wind, in me, for 1,000 worlds, is rising up in a word, as with a sickle, this year, I say, by this time, mostly for a need, if you please, as in many things, so in this, so-called, in want, meum, in singleness of heart, with a witness. Copse, farewell. I give you but a little touch of what a sign I have been. O London, London, as many have felt, brought in with heaven quakes, led through which I lay smoking, I inwardly in you. I witness an innumerable company appearances of in me hearts. I advise you now, looking wishly on me without contradiction. I have lain in the channel at length, several times over emptied. Thank you.